Him, she said, just like that. One word slicing through the air. I swear you could hear the warrior's blood boil. 12 mountains of muscle reduced to simmering rage. They thought it was their right. Her hand in marriage was a prize. And here comes Levi, a ghost in their world. He just wanted to trade, not ignite a war. But Kiona saw something in him, something they missed, something scared them. 6 months ago, he saved a calf from drowning, nearly died doing it. A kindness witnessed, a secret held. What they don't know? That small act will unravel their world. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. Him, she said, just like that. One word slicing through the air. I swear you could hear the warrior's blood boil. 12 mountains of muscle reduced to simmering rage. They thought it was their right. Her hand in marriage was a prize. And here comes Levi, a ghost in their world. He just wanted to trade, not ignite a war. But Kiona saw something in him, something they missed, something scared them. 6 months ago, he saved a calf from drowning, nearly died doing it. A kindness witnessed, a secret held. What they don't know? That small act will unravel their world. They have no idea how her quiet kindness will change everything. The midday sun beat down, turning the dust of the training ground into a shimmering haze. 12 warriors stood poised, their bronze bodies oiled and gleaming, each a testament to years of brutal training. They shifted, eager for her gaze, confident in their strength. Not Kiona. Her dark eyes, usually bright with laughter, were fixed on a figure lurking at the edge of the clearing, a man who seemed to absorb the light around him. Levi Holloway. He was lean, almost gaunt, his weathered face etched with the harsh landscapes he roamed. Scars, pale against sun-baked skin, spoke of a life lived on the knife's edge. He hadn't been invited. He didn't belong. Yet when her father, Chief Kuruk, his voice booming across the silent gathering, had asked the question, "Daughter, who have you chosen to be your husband, to join our tribe?" Her hand, delicate yet firm, had extended, a single unwavering finger pointing directly at him. A collective gasp rippled through the assembled tribe. The warriors, their faces masks of bewilderment that quickly morphed into simmering fury, shifted their weight, their muscles bunching beneath their painted skin. This was not the way. Such a thing was simply unthinkable. 3 days prior, Levi had ambled into their hidden valley, a silent promise of winter carried in the creak of his saddle leather and the weariness of his half-starved horse. Nestled between towering red cliffs, the Apache settlement remained a secret, a haven from the encroaching world beyond. Twice a year he appeared, a quiet trader, offering salt, coffee, and medicine for cured hides and hand-woven blankets. They tolerated him because he was unobtrusive, respectful, and fleeting. He asked nothing. He took only what was offered, and he vanished as silently as he arrived. But this time, the air hung thick with anticipation. The entire settlement had congregated in the central clearing, the energy palpable. The warriors, adorned in war paint and ceremonial attire, pulsed with raw power. Levi immediately recognized the significance, the choosing ceremony. Kiona, the chief's daughter, would select her husband from amongst the bravest, strongest warriors the Apache nation could offer. Alliances would be forged, futures determined. Instinct screamed at Levi to turn his horse around, to disappear back into the anonymity of the plains. This was sacred ground, a world away from his own. He had no place here. But then he saw her, Kiona. He'd caught glimpses of her during his previous visits, fleeting impressions of a vibrant spirit. But now she stood at the heart of it all, draped in white deerskin, turquoise beads gleaming against her dark hair, her face painted with intricate red ochre designs. She should have exuded triumph, the glow of a coveted prize. Instead, he saw a trapped bird, wings fluttering against an invisible cage. Their eyes met. A fleeting moment, a spark in the vast darkness, a jolt of recognition. He'd never spoken to her, never been closer than 50 paces. Yet in that instant, a silent acknowledgement passed between them, a shared understanding that transcended words. He imagined a flicker of surprise in her eyes, a response to something she saw reflected in his own. Then the moment was gone, broken by the movement of the crowd. He dismounted, tethering his horse to a scrubby tree near the trading post, telling himself he'd wait for the ceremony to conclude before setting off. But he couldn't leave. An invisible tether held him rooted to the spot, a silent observer in the shadows. The warriors began their displays of prowess, each vying for her attention. Takakota, a towering behemoth of a man with muscles that rippled like storm clouds, went first. He moved with a grace that belied his size, executing a series of lethal combat maneuvers, then lifting a boulder that would have crippled lesser men. A roar of approval erupted from the crowd. The others followed, each demonstrating their mastery of weaponry, their endurance, their unwavering loyalty to the tribe. Levi looked down at his own hands, gnarled and scarred, the legacy of a barn fire long ago. These were the hands of a man who scraped a living from the unforgiving land, not the hands of a warrior. He was a ghost, a shadow. He glanced up, and there she was, Kiona, her gaze locked on him. Not a fleeting glance, but a direct, unwavering stare. Her father stood beside her, speaking in their native tongue, gesturing towards the assembled warriors. She nodded in response, but her eyes remained fixed on Levi's face. Takakota noticed. His features hardened as he followed Kiona's gaze, his expression a silent promise of retribution. Murmurs spread through the crowd, whispers of disbelief and growing unease. Chief Kuruk raised a hand, silencing the rising tide of discontent. He spoke in heavily accented English, his voice resonating with authority. My daughter will choose now. One man here will join our family. One will become her husband and a warrior of our people. The 12 warriors straightened, each radiating unwavering confidence. Takakota took a half step forward, a smug smile already forming on his lips. This was a mere formality. Everyone knew he was the obvious choice. Kiona's hand rose slowly, deliberately. The air crackled with anticipation. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Her finger trembled as it ascended, and for a heart-stopping moment, Levi thought she would point towards Takakota, fulfilling the expected script. But her finger continued its arc, moving past the warriors, past all 12 of them, and settling directly on him. The shock was a physical blow, stealing the air from his lungs. The warriors froze, suspended mid-breath. A wave of confused murmurs surged through the crowd. Kuruk's face paled, then flushed with a mixture of fury and disbelief. Takakota turned fully towards Levi, his eyes burning with hatred. He had to be mistaken. This couldn't be happening. But Kiona's hand remained raised, steady now, an arrow finding its mark. Her voice, clear and unwavering, cut through the silence. Him, she said. I choose him. The ensuing silence lasted for 3 heartbeats, then shattered. Takakota exploded into action. His massive form covered the distance between them in a handful of strides, his hand instinctively reaching for the knife at his belt. The other warriors surged forward, forming a wall of muscle and rage, a barrier between Kiona and the outsider who dared to steal what was rightfully theirs. Voices erupted in a cacophony of angry shouts, a mixture of English and Apache, the meaning clear regardless of the language. This was an insult, a violation, an impossibility. Levi's hand instinctively moved towards his hip, a phantom gesture towards a weapon that wasn't there. He left his gun with his horse, a mark of respect he now bitterly regretted. He stood defenseless, facing the wrath of 12 of the most dangerous men he'd ever seen. His mouth went dry, his burned hand trembled at his side. Stop! Kuruk's voice sliced through the chaos like a blade. The warriors froze, their fury barely contained. Takakota, closest to Levi, stood close enough for the cowboy to smell the bear grease in his hair, to see the intricate patterns of old battle scars crisscrossing his chest. The warrior's eyes burned with a promise of future violence. The chief approached his daughter, his weathered face unreadable. When he spoke, his voice, though low, carried to every corner of the clearing. Kiona, explain this choice. She remained perfectly still, her hand finally lowering to her side, but her eyes remained locked on Levi, as if looking away would shatter the fragile connection between them. I saw him 6 months ago, Father, at the river crossing near the Red Cliffs. Levi's mind raced. 6 months. The river. He'd been tracking a stray calf that had wandered away from his meager herd. He'd found it trapped in the mud near the riverbank. He spent 3 hours in the freezing current, digging it free with his bare hands, his burned skin screaming in protest. He was alone, or thought he was alone. I watched him save an animal that most men would have abandoned, Kiona continued, her voice gaining strength. He nearly drowned, trying to free something that had no value to anyone but itself. When he finally pulled it to shore, he sat in the mud for a long time, just breathing, not celebrating, not proud, just tired and hurt and alone. She paused, and for the first time, her voice wavered slightly. I saw the scars on his hands, even from a distance, burns that looked old but still painful. Later I learned he got them trying to save his family's barn when he was younger. He failed that day and lost everything. But he never stopped trying to save things. That is who he is. Her voice strengthened. I saw something in his face that day. Something these warriors don't carry. Weakness, Takakota spat the word like venom. Kindness, Kiona corrected, her voice hardening. The strength to suffer for something that cannot repay you. The courage to keep going when no one is watching, to praise you for it. Kuruk's expression remained impassive. This man is not Apache. He is not a warrior. He cannot protect you. He protected a helpless animal when he could barely protect himself, Kiona replied. That is the man I choose to build a life with. The chief studied Levi for a long moment, his gaze as sharp and assessing as a hawk sizing up its prey. Finally, he addressed the cowboy directly. Do you accept this choice? Levi's throat felt like it was filled with sand. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to run, to put as much distance as possible between himself and this madness. Takakota and the others would kill him at the first opportunity. Even if Kuruk permitted this, the tribe would never accept him. But Kiona was still looking at him, her dark eyes holding a depth of something he couldn't quite decipher. In her gaze, he felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. Not pitied, not judged, just seen. Yes, he heard himself say, the word a rough rasp. I accept. Takakota's roar of rage echoed off the red cliffs as the warrior lunged forward, his fist a blur of motion. This time, no one moved fast enough to stop him. Levi didn't see the blow coming. He only felt the explosion of pain across his jaw, the ground rushing up to meet him, the coppery taste of blood filling his mouth. His vision swam. Somewhere above him, Takakota was shouting in his native tongue, words that required no translation. The warrior's boot drew back for another strike. Enough! Kuruk's command carried the weight of absolute authority. Two other warriors seized Takakota's arms, pulling him back. The massive man fought against them for a moment, then stilled, his chest heaving with barely controlled fury. Levi pushed himself to his hands and knees, spitting blood into the dust. His jaw felt like it might be broken. He'd taken beatings before, plenty of them, but Takakota hit like a force of nature. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard the chief speaking. Our tradition is sacred. When a woman makes her choice, it is final. No man may challenge it. Kuruk's voice was iron. But tradition also demands proof of worth. If this outsider claims my daughter, he must prove he deserves what these warriors have earned through years of dedication to our people. Levi managed to get to his feet, swaying slightly as the world tilted and then righted itself. Kiona had moved closer, her face etched with concern, but her father's hand on her shoulder kept her from approaching. Takakota smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression Levi had ever seen. 3 trials the way our ancestors demanded when warriors from other tribes sought to join us. 3 tests of strength, courage, and will. He gestured dismissively at Levi's lean frame, his calloused hands, his worn boots. If he fails even one, he leaves, and the woman chooses again from those who belong here. The other warriors murmured in agreement. This was familiar territory, a framework they understood. Trials could be measured, strength could be proven or disproven. The natural order could be restored. Kuruk studied Levi for a long moment. The outsider may refuse the trials. He can leave now, and no harm will come to him beyond what has already been done. It was an escape route, a clean way out of a situation that would likely end with his death. Levi looked at Kiona. She hadn't moved, but something in her expression reminded him of that calf trapped in the mud, helpless, yet fighting, terrified yet unbroken. "What are the trials?" His voice came out rough, thick with blood. Takakota's smile widened. "The first trial begins at dawn tomorrow, the test of endurance. You will carry stones up the cliff path, the same number as each of us carries, the same distance, the same time limit." He gestured to the towering red cliffs that rose behind the settlement, their faces sheer and unforgiving. "If you fall behind, you fail. If you drop your stones, you fail. If you stop to rest, you fail." Levi looked up at the cliffs. They rose at least 300 feet, the path barely visible from this distance. He'd seen mountain goats struggle on slopes less treacherous than that, and he'd be carrying a crippling weight while warriors twice his size did the same. "Second trial?" he asked. "You'll learn when you survive the first." Takakota stepped closer, his voice a low, venomous whisper. "You won't. I'll make certain of it. And when you're crawling in the dirt, broken and humiliated, she'll see what you truly are. Weak, worthless, nothing." The warrior turned and strode away, the others following in his wake. The crowd began to disperse, their voices low with speculation and doubt. Kuruk approached Levi, his expression unreadable. "You should leave before dawn," the chief said quietly. "This will not end the way you hope." Then he too turned away, guiding Kiona back toward the center of the settlement. She glanced back once and Levi saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. Not fear of the trials themselves, but fear of what would happen when he failed. Levi touched his swelling jaw and watched the sun sink towards the horizon. He had less than 12 hours to figure out how to survive something designed to destroy him. Dawn arrived cold and merciless, painting the sky in shades of gray and crimson. Levi stood at the base of the cliff path, his legs already trembling from a sleepless night. The 12 warriors assembled beside him, each carrying a leather sling loaded with stones. Takakota hefted his load as if it weighed nothing, his muscles relaxed, his breathing even. The others looked equally unconcerned. They'd done this before, many times. Kuruk approached with a sling for Levi. The cowboy took it, and the weight nearly pulled him to his knees. 40 pounds, maybe 50. The rough leather straps bit into his shoulders immediately. His burned hands screamed in protest as he gripped the support rope. "The path rises 300 feet, Kuruk announced to the gathered tribe. "You will climb to the marker stone at the summit, touch it, and return. Any man who drops his stones is eliminated. Any man who stops moving for more than the time it takes to draw 3 breaths is eliminated." He looked directly at Levi. "Any man who falls, dies." The path was barely 2 feet wide in places, a treacherous scar etched into the red stone by centuries of wind and rain. No railings, no safety nets, just exposed rock face and a sheer drop to the valley floor below. Takakota moved to stand beside Levi, close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. "I'm going to enjoy watching you fall," he whispered, his breath hot against Levi's ear. The chief raised his hand, then dropped it. The warriors surged forward as one, their legs pumping, their bodies leaning into the unforgiving incline. They moved with practiced ease, finding purchase on the narrow path, their stones held secure against their powerful backs. Levi stumbled after them, his boots slipping on loose gravel. Within minutes, the gap between him and the last warrior had widened to 20 feet, then 30. His lungs burned, his muscles screamed, his every fiber protested against the brutal weight. The stones felt like they were growing heavier with each step, the straps digging deeper into his raw shoulders. Sweat poured down his face despite the frigid morning air. The burned skin on his hand cracked open where he gripped the rope, fresh blood making it slick and treacherous. Halfway up, his right foot slipped on a patch of loose shale. For a heart-stopping moment, he teetered on the edge, the stones pulling him backward towards the empty void. His arms windmilled desperately, his body fighting against the inexorable pull of gravity. The crowd below gasped. Then his left hand shot out and snagged a jagged rock, arresting his fall. He pressed his forehead against the cold stone wall, his chest heaving, waiting for his heart to stop its frantic hammering. Above him, the warriors were pulling further away. Takakota glanced back, a cruel smile twisting his lips, then deliberately kicked loose a shower of stones that rained down on Levi. The cowboy had to flatten himself against the cliff face, shielding his head as the sharp edges tore at his arms. He wanted to quit. Every cell in his body screamed at him to turn around, to accept defeat, to crawl back down this mountain before it claimed his life. But then he glanced down at the settlement below and saw her, Kiona, a solitary figure in white, watching. Even from this distance, he could feel the intensity of her gaze. Levi forced his legs to move, one step, then another. His vision narrowed to the path directly in front of him, blotting out everything else. Not the warriors ahead, not the terrifying drop behind, just the next handhold, the next footfall. The burned skin on his hand tore completely open, blood running down his wrist, hot and slick. He switched the rope to his left hand, but it was weaker, less reliable, and the stones shifted precariously. His shoulder muscles felt like they were tearing away from the bone. 200 feet up, a flicker of hope. He'd closed the gap. The last warrior was only 10 feet ahead now. The man glanced back, surprised, then redoubled his efforts. But Levi had tapped into something the warriors hadn't accounted for, a primal reserve born of desperation and years of hardship. They were strong, powerful, yes, but they'd never had to survive on nothing. Never had to push through pain that should have killed them. Never had to keep going when every logical reason screamed at them to stop. Levi had, every day of his life. The summit marker shimmered into view through his blurred vision. The warriors were already there, touching the stone, beginning their descent. Takakota stood beside the marker, waiting. His smile faltered when he saw Levi still climbing, still fighting. The cowboy's hand reached the marker stone, touched it. For one brief moment, he allowed himself to stop, to breathe, to savor the impossible fact that he'd made it. Then Takakota stepped directly into his path, blocking the narrow route down. And Levi understood that the true test was just beginning. Takakota didn't yield an inch. He stood planted in the center of the path, arms crossed, his massive frame an insurmountable obstacle. The other warriors had already started their descent, their stones delivered, their part in the first trial complete. Only Levi remained at the summit, face to face with the giant who had sworn to destroy him. "You're in my way," Levi said, his voice a cracked whisper. "Then move me." The cowboy's legs shook with exhaustion. His right hand was a mess of blood and torn skin. The weight of the stones pulled at his shoulders like an anchor dragging him toward the edge. He had nothing left to fight with. Takakota knew it. The smile on the warrior's face said he knew it. Levi looked past him down the path where it narrowed to barely 18 in wide, with a sheer drop on the left side. That section was the most dangerous part of the descent, and Takakota stood right before it. "Last chance to quit," the warrior said. "Drop your stones. Admit you don't belong here." Instead was a mess of blood and torn skin. The weight of the stones pulled at his shoulders like an anchor, dragging him toward the edge. He had nothing left to fight with. Takakota knew it. The smile on the warrior's face said he knew it. Levi looked past him down the path where it narrowed to barely 18 in wide with a sheer drop on the left side. That section was the most dangerous part of the descent, and Takakota stood right before it. "Last chance to quit," the warrior said. "Drop your stones. Admit you don't belong here." Instead, Levi did something that surprised them both. He sat down, right there on the path, stones still strapped to his back. He looked up at Takakota with blood-rimmed eyes and spoke quietly. "You can stand there all day if you want. I'm not dropping these stones, and I'm not going anywhere until you move." Confusion flickered across Takakota's face. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The cowboy was supposed to panic, to try to force past, to make a mistake that would send him tumbling off the cliff. Sitting down wasn't an option the warrior had considered. Minutes passed. The sun climbed higher, heating the red stone. Sweat poured off both men. Below, the crowd grew restless, voices rising in speculation. Kuruk's voice carried up the cliff face. "Takakota, move. The trial continues." The warrior's jaw clenched. For a moment, Levi thought he might refuse. Then Takakota stepped aside, just barely, leaving only the narrowest gap between his body and the drop. Levi would have to squeeze past him, stones and all, with nothing but air on his left side. The cowboy stood slowly, legs threatening to give out. He approached the gap. Takakota shifted slightly, making it even tighter. Levi turned sideways, pressing his back against the warrior's chest, feeling the heat radiating from the massive body. His boots found the edge of the path, half his heel hanging over empty space. One push, Takakota breathed in his ear. That's all it would take. Levi's heart hammered. His burned hand gripped the stone wall to his right, blood making it slippery. He slid 1 foot forward, then the other. Inch by inch, he squeezed through the gap. Takakota's body was solid as the cliff itself, offering no give. The warrior's breathing stayed calm, controlled, while Levis's came in ragged gasps. Then he was through past Takakota on the open path again. He didn't look back. Didn't waste energy on anything except moving down that mountain. His legs were wooden posts. His vision tunneled. The stones felt like they were crushing his spine, but he kept moving. When his boots finally touched level ground, he dropped to his knees. Someone cut the straps on the stone sling, and the weight lifted away. He couldn't make his lungs work properly. Black spots danced across his vision. Hands touched his shoulders. Small hands, the scent of sage and smoke. Kiona knelt beside him, her face close to his. She said nothing, just looked at him with those dark eyes that had started all of this. Her hand brushed his torn palm, and he felt her fingers tremble. First trial complete, Kuruk announced. The outsider stands. The crowd's reaction was mixed. Some showed grudging respect. Others looked angry that he'd survived. Takakota descended last, his face dark with barely contained rage. Second trial, the chief continued. We'll test courage. At sunset, each warrior must enter the canyon of dead trees and retrieve a specific item I have placed there. You will go alone. You will go unarmed. You will return with proof, or you will not return at all. Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Levi had heard stories about that canyon. Animals went in and didn't come out. The trees were bare and white, stripped of life by something no one could explain. Even the warriors looked uneasy. Takakota stepped forward, his voice carrying clearly. And if the outsider fails to return, if the canyon claims him, Kuruk's expression remained neutral. Then the spirits will have made the choice we could not. Kiona's hand tightened on Levi's shoulder, and he understood what she couldn't say aloud. The second trial wasn't designed to test courage, it was designed to kill him. Sunset painted the canyon entrance in a shades of blood and copper. Levi stood at the edge, looking into the throat of dead trees that stretched before him like bones scattered across the earth. The 12 warriors had already entered, disappearing one by one into the pale forest. Takakota had gone first, moving with confidence that bordered on arrogance. Now only Levi remained outside. Kuruk approached, holding a small leather pouch. Inside this canyon, I have placed 13 carved stones. Each bears a unique mark. You must find yours and return before the moon reaches its peak. 4 hours, no more. What makes this place dangerous? Levi asked, studying the white trees that gave the canyon its name. Rattlesnakes nest in the hollows. Cougars hunt in the rocks above. The terrain is broken, full of hidden drops and unstable ground. Men have died here. Kuruk's expression remained unreadable. Some by animals, some by falling, some simply never return. The chief handed him the pouch. Inside, Levi found a small piece of charcoal and a scrap of cloth. Your stone bears this mark. Kuruk showed him a drawing. 3 parallel lines crossed by a diagonal. Simple but specific. Levi tied the pouch to his belt and stepped into the canyon. The temperature dropped immediately. The dead trees blocked what remained of the sunlight, creating deep shadows that moved wrong, playing tricks on his eyes. His boots crunched on brittle branches that covered the ground like a carpet of shattered bones. The canyon floor was a maze. Paths split and rejoined, leading between clusters of white trunks that all looked identical. Within minutes, Levi lost his sense of direction. The walls rose steep on both sides, blocking any view of the sky except for a narrow strip overhead. He understood why men didn't return. This place was designed to swallow you. A rattling sound froze him mid-step. 3F to his left, coiled in the hollow of a dead root. A snake watched him with flat black eyes. Its body was thick as his forearm, patterned in brown and tan that had been invisible until it moved. The rattle continued its warning, a dry sound that raised the hair on his neck. Levi backed away slowly, never taking his eyes from the snake. His heel caught on a branch and he nearly fell. The snake's head rose, tracking his movement. He held his breath until he'd put 20 FT between them, then turned and kept moving deeper into the canyon. The stones had to be hidden in specific places. Kuruk wouldn't have scattered them randomly. Levi started checking anywhere that offered natural shelter, under overhangs, in the crooks of fallen trees, behind rock formations. He found 3 stones that weren't his. Each time he carefully memorized the mark and moved on. An hour passed, then 2. His hands were cut from moving sharp rocks and thorny branches. The shadows grew darker. Somewhere above, he heard the scream of a cougar, that terrible sound that mimicked a woman's cry. It echoed off the canyon walls, making it impossible to tell where the animal actually was. Then he saw it, a stone wedged in a crack at the base of a massive dead tree. He pulled it free and turned it over. 3 parallel lines crossed by a diagonal. His mark. Relief flooded through him, but it was short-lived. Getting in had been hard. Getting out would be worse. The light was nearly gone now, and he'd taken so many turns that he wasn't certain which direction led back to the entrance. A sound reached him through the darkness. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, moving toward him through the dead forest. Levi gripped the stone and pressed himself against a tree trunk, barely breathing. Takakota emerged from the shadows, his carved stone already in hand. The warrior stopped when he saw Levi, and a slow smile spread across his face. They were alone in the canyon. No witnesses, no rules, just 2 men in the gathering night. "You found your stone," Dakota said softly. "Pity you won't make it back to show anyone." Levi's hand moved to his belt, searching for anything he could use as a weapon. Nothing. Kuruk had been clear. No weapons allowed. He was alone with a warrior twice his size in a place where bodies could disappear and no one would ask questions. Takakota took a step forward, then another. His movements were unhurried, confident they'll find you in a week, maybe 2. If the animals leave enough, everyone will assume you got lost. That the canyon claimed you like it claims all weak men. "Kuruk will know," Levi said, backing up slowly. His heel found the edge of a drop he hadn't noticed before. Nowhere left to go. "Will he?" Takakota's smile widened. "Or will he accept that you were never strong enough for his daughter? That nature corrected a mistake she made?" The warrior lunged. Levi threw himself sideways, rolling across the broken ground. Sharp branches tore his shirt and cut his skin. He came up running, plunging deeper into the maze of dead trees. Behind him, Takakota's footsteps pounded like war drums. Levi's lungs burned. His legs were still weak from the morning's climb. He couldn't outrun this man, couldn't outfight him. The only advantage he had was desperation and the knowledge that Takakota expected him to act like prey. He skidded to a stop at a place where 3 paths converged. Takakota's footsteps were getting closer. Levi looked around frantically, then spotted what he needed. The rattlesnake's hollow, the same one he'd passed earlier, marked in his memory by a distinctive bent tree beside it. He grabbed a long branch and jammed it into the hollow, then dove behind a cluster of rocks. The snake exploded from its hiding place, rattling furiously, disturbed twice in one evening. Its thick body writhed across the path, just as Takakota rounded the corner at full speed. The warrior saw the snake too late. His boot came down inches from its coiled body. The snake struck, fangs sinking deep into his calf. Takakota roared, stumbling backward. He ripped the snake away and threw it against a tree where it landed in a broken heap, but the damage was done. Levi watched from his hiding place as Takakota dropped to one knee. Breathing hard, the warrior pulled his knife and cut an X across the bite mark, trying to bleed out the venom. It wouldn't work. Not with a snake that size. Not with that much poison already pumping through his blood. "You, Takakota," gasped, his face contorting with pain and rage. "You did this. You did this," Levi corrected quietly, stepping from behind the rocks. "I was leaving. You chose to hunt me." The warrior tried to stand, but his leg gave out. Sweat poured down his face. His breathing was becoming labored. Each breath a struggle. Snake venom was shutting down his body, muscle by muscle. Levi could have left him there, could have walked away and let the canyon finish what Takakota had started. Instead, he moved closer, staying just out of reach. "Where's the exit?" Takakota laughed, a sound that turned into a cough. "Why would I tell you? Because you're going to die if you stay here. And maybe somewhere under all that hate, you'd rather live." The warrior studied him for a long moment, pain and fury wearing in his expression. Finally, he pointed with his knife. North, follow the wall on your right. Don't deviate. Levi picked up a long branch and broke it in half, then used strips from his torn shirt to bind it into a makeshift crutch. He handed it to Takakota. Can you walk? I don't need your help. Yes, you do. And you're going to accept it because that's what separates us. I save things that are trying to kill me. It took them nearly an hour to reach the canyon entrance. Takakota leaned heavily on Levi in the crutch, his face gray with pain, his injured leg dragging. The other warriors were already there, stones in hand. They rushed forward when they saw Takakota, voices rising in alarm at his condition. Kuruk appeared, his eyes moving from his injured warrior to Levi and back again. What happened? Snake, Takakota said through gritted teeth. My fault, not his. The chief looked at Levi and something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition that the cowboy was not what anyone had assumed. He held out his hand. Levi placed the carved stone in it. Second trial complete, Kuruk announced. Then his voice hardened. Tomorrow the final test, the test of will. You will fight each warrior against each other, one by one, until only two remain standing. Then those two will face each other. The winner claims the right to marry my daughter. The crowd erupted in approval. This was what they'd wanted all along. Blood, proof, a clear victor. Levi looked at the 12 warriors, looked at Takakota being carried away by his brothers, looked at the fists and scars and cold eyes that promised violence. Tomorrow he would have to fight them all and somehow, impossibly survive. Dawn arrived with the sound of drums. The entire settlement gathered in a wide circle, creating an arena in the dust. 11 warriors stood ready. Takakota was absent, still recovering from the snake bite, his legs swollen and useless. But 11 was more than enough to destroy one exhausted cowboy. Levi's body was a map of pain. His hands were barely functional, wrapped in strips of cloth to hold the torn skin together. His ribs ached from the climb. Bruises covered his arms and back. He'd survived 2 trials through luck and desperation. This third one would require a miracle he didn't believe in. The first warrior stepped into the circle, a man named Nishoba, shorter than Takakota, but built like a boulder. Fists scarred from a lifetime of fighting. He smiled at Levi, the way a wolf smiles at a wounded deer. Kuruk raised his hand. Begin, Nishoba charged. Levi tried to dodge, but his exhausted legs betrayed him. The warrior's fist caught him in the ribs, driving the air from his lungs. He went down hard. Nishoba followed, raining blows that Levi could only partially block. The crowd roared approval. Then something unexpected happened. A voice cut through the noise. Enough! Takakota stood at the edge of the circle, leaning heavily on a walking stick, his face still gray with pain. Nishoba paused, fist raised. Everyone turned to look at the injured warrior. This is not our way, Takakota said, limping forward. Our trials test strength, courage, and will. He has shown all 3. Yesterday in the canyon, I tried to kill him. He let those words hang in the air. I tracked him like prey, planned to leave his body for the animals. But when I fell, when the snake's poison was burning through me, he didn't leave. He saved me, carried me out of that place when he could have watched me die. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Nishoba lowered his fist slowly, confusion on his face. Takakota looked at Levi and something passed between them. Not friendship, but recognition. I am the strongest warrior here, the fastest, the most skilled in combat. Every woman should want me, he paused, but strength without honor is nothing. Power without compassion is weakness dressed in muscle. He turned to face the other warriors. We tested his body and found it wanting. We tested his courage and found it boundless. We tested his will and discovered it cannot be broken. Perhaps the question is not whether he is worthy of her. Perhaps the question is whether we are worthy to stand beside him. The silence that followed was absolute. Kuruk stepped into the circle, his weathered face unreadable. He walked to where Levi knelt in the dust, breathing hard, blood on his lips. The chief studied him for a long moment. My daughter saw something in you that I did not, Kuruk said quietly. She saw past the surface to what lives beneath. I asked you to prove your strength, but you proved something more valuable. You proved your heart. He extended his hand. Rise. The trials are complete. Levi took the offered hand and stood swaying slightly. The circle of warriors parted, and Kiona walked through them. She wore white deerskin decorated with turquoise, her hair braided with feathers, her face painted with ceremonial marks, but her eyes were only for him. She stopped before Levi and placed her hand over his heart. I chose you, she said simply, not because you were strongest, but because you were true. Kuruk spoke to the gathered tribe. Kiona has made her choice. The trials have proven his worth. Any who object must speak now. No one spoke. Even the warriors who'd wanted to destroy Levi remained silent. Takakoda nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement, if not friendship. The wedding ceremony happened that evening under a sky painted with stars. It was simple, traditional, binding. When Kuruk joined their hands, Levi felt the weight of everything that had brought him to this moment. The years of loneliness, the scars, the pain. All of it had been a path leading here. 3 months later, they built a small house on the border between Levi's land and the Apache settlement, a place that belonged to both worlds and neither. Kiona taught him her language. He taught her about cattle and horses. Takakoda visited sometimes, bringing news from the tribe, his limp gradually fading. The warrior never apologized for trying to kill him, but he never needed to. His presence spoke what words couldn't. On cold nights, Levi would sit on the porch and remember the day 12 warriors fought for her hand. Remember her finger pointing at him. Remember choosing to accept something impossible. And beside him, Kiona would smile, her hand finding his scarred palm. And they would watch the sun set over land that had witnessed the strangest truth of all, that sometimes the weakest man wins, not by being strongest, but by being brave enough to try. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale from the frontier, where courage and destiny collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything to us.